Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari-chan and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are continuing with the second to last reading of Guardian Volume 1, also known as Junhun by Priest. Today we are covering chapters 23 through 26. Let's just get into it. Chapter 23. The soul-executing emissary's black robes were like a thick mist, impenetrable even by sunlight. They abruptly billowed up to form a protective screen several stories high, engulfing them both. They were cut off from the sunlight and everything else. While holding him, the emissary lifted Zhao Yunlan's hand and pressed on his watch. "Come out." His voice was quiet, but the command was unmistakable. The little puppet floated out hesitantly. Its lowered head was shockingly large compared to its small body. The emissary glanced at it, then raised a hand and summoned it back into his sleeve. "Get in here." The puppet didn't dare say anything. It obediently turned into gray mist, taking care to curl up into a perfect ball and rolled into his sleeve. Wang had also emerged. She took a half step back, looking at Zhao Yunlan worriedly. When the emissary's frigid gaze fell on her, she began to tremble. The emissary sat on the ground, carefully shifting the man in his arms into a more comfortable position. "You're under his control. Whether you were right or wrong is not for me to judge. Sit to the side for now." Wang didn't dare approach him. She hesitated for a moment, then found herself the farthest possible corner to sit down in, right along the edge of the protection he'd raised. The emissary seemed to be taking great care to keep Zhao Yunlan from getting dirty, even though Zhao Yunlan had already made a mess of himself. When the emissary carefully set the soul-executing blade aside, Wang got a look at it, and the blood-stained hilt. From within a vast sleeve reminiscent of a black hole, a deadly pale hand emerged. The emissary wiped the blood from the corner of Zhao Yunlan's mouth almost tenderly. His fingertips lingered barely perceptibly where they grazed Zhao Yunlan's lips. The air was charged with an indescribable tension, as if the emissary would lean down and kiss him at any moment. Wang didn't dare make a sound, but her eyes widened in shock. When Zhao Yunlan woke up, he found his head cushioned on someone's shoulder. He felt like he'd just been through a particularly awful bout of vomiting that had battered his innards. His entire body felt weak. With great difficulty, he sat up and opened his eyes to find the soul-executing emissary beside him. "You..." An icy finger sealed his lips. The emissary pressed a supportive hand to his back and said, voice low, "Do not speak. Focus." A gentle but cold energy accompanied the words, flowing slowly from the emissary's palm. Zhao Yunlan shivered, but he didn't pull away. As the energy flowed, he closed his eyes and entrusted his wounded body wholly to the emissary's care. The soul-executing emissary's coldness was said to spring from his innate ruthlessness and cruelty, but it was comfort spreading through Zhao Yunlan now, the churning in his chest slowly calming. Zhao Yunlan couldn't help admiring the emissary. In all the years he'd been in charge of the soul-guarding order, whenever he encountered truly heinous crimes or the most unbelievable situations, the emissary had always personally arrived to take care of it. They had always had a partnership. In all that time, Zhao Yunlan had never seen the emissary act rudely or lose control. He always seemed so calm, modest, and amiable. With some sort of extreme self-restraint, that innate cruelty was suppressed to the point that not a hint of it was detectable. Extreme restraint is sometimes exercised in pursuit of extreme freedom. If someone could mercilessly quash their very nature for hundreds of thousands of years, then on the one hand, it would be an excruciating existence. But on the other hand, what an incredible person they would have to be. After some time, the soul-deep pain gradually faded. Zhao Yunlan opened his eyes again and was able to sit up clearly. Thank you, thank you. Good thing you were here. Clearly, my luck has gone downhill enough lately that now it's starting to improve. That's funny. The emissary withdrew his hand a bit reluctantly. Having broken contact, he backed up a little. Politely, he said, "Think nothing of it, but you should have heeded my warning, guardian." "It's all because of that damned girl." With his chin, Zhao Yunlan indicated Wang not far away. "Every person at 4 Bright Avenue matters. As long as it's work hours, they're all my people. I can't just leave her." His expression darkened as he addressed her directly. "Get the fuck over here." Wang floated over silently. Zhao Yunlan swung his whip toward her, and Wang reflexively closed her eyes, but the whip didn't touch her. Instead, it brushed past her, then curled in on itself mid-air. It swept over the ground, leaving a deep white mark. "Why are you closing your eyes? I don't hit women. Get over here." The long whip turned into a paper talisman and drifted into Zhao Yunlan's hand. There was still some blood on the corner. Zhao Yunlan's gaze swept past the blood to glance at Wang. "The soul guarding order isn't enough to order you around anymore, is it?" Wang said nothing. She just knelt in front of him. Zhao Yunlan wasn't having any of that. "Don't kneel either. What are you kneeling for? My wallet's still in the car. I don't have red pocket money to give you." Wang bit her lip. Zhao Yunlan glowered at her, expression unkind. He took a cigarette from his pocket and put it between his lips, but as he was looking for his lighter, a hand suddenly plucked the cigarette away. Zhao Yunlan touched his nose. Somehow, that felt a little familiar. "I've checked your file," Zhao Yunlan told her. He rubbed his fingers together, unused to having them empty. "You died in 1713, the second year of the inner turmoil that you said the Hanga people suffered. What happened? You wanted to find your corpse. Where is it? Did you place all those offerings under that huge pillar? What is that?" The soul-executing emissary interjected. "That huge pillar is known as the mountain River Awl." The name sounded familiar. Zhao Yunlan thought about it, brow furrowed in thought. "One of the 4 hollowed artifacts?" The emissary nodded. "The guardian is knowledgeable." First the reincarnation Dao, now the mountain River Awl. The 4 hollowed artifacts had been lost in the mortal realm for years on end. It wasn't like they were cabbages in the market going for 20 cents a pound, and just coincidentally encountering 2 of them within 6 months. If Zhao Yunlan really had that kind of dumb luck, he should have been buying lottery tickets as a profession. He couldn't help but lean into the conspiracy theory forming in his mind. The Dragon City University administrative building that was suspiciously spotless when he'd gone back. The hunger ghost that had just happened to see its sights on Li Qian. The random disappearance of the reincarnation dial, which had yet to turn up. The warrant for the Youchu, and the soul-executing emissary's sudden warning. Zhao Yunlan's face turned serious. "What exactly is the mountain River Awl?" "People say that the power beyond us control life and death, but that is not the genuine truth," said the emissary. "Since the dawn of chaos, at the beginning of all things, good and evil have always existed. The very earliest judgment of good and evil was carved into the mountain River Awl. The Awl was formed from the essence of hundreds of thousands of rivers and mountains. It starts above the 9 heavens and pierces all the way down to below the Huangquan. The punishments of the 18 levels of hell are all carved on it. As time passed, it was also the basis of many judgments in the Book of Life and Death. To this day, people believe that the mountains and water have souls. That belief goes all the way back to those times." The emissary paused. "Because the mountain River Awl was initially used for sealing and suppression, tens of thousands of evil spirits had been bound within it over time, condemned to obey. I never imagined that after it was lost, it fell into the hands of those who would seal generations of their people inside it for eternity." Other people can approach it without harm, but you... An unfamiliar hesitance entered the emissary's voice as he considered his choice of words. He continued at last, "You were born with an unstable soul. If you draw too close to these soul-sealing objects, of course you will feel the effects more than others." No one had ever said such a thing to Zhao Yunlan before. Caught off guard, he said, "Unstable soul? Me? My ethereal and corporeal souls are all just fine. Why would they be unstable?" Footnote 37. According to traditional beliefs, every human has 3 ethereal souls, hun, which leave the body after death, and 7 corporeal souls, po, that remain with the corpse. Returning to the reading. The soul executing emissary fell silent again, then said, "Everyone has one true flame of samadhi on each shoulder and one on their head. You were born with no fire on your shoulder, a phenomenon known as ghost-touched shoulder. That makes your soul prone to instability. The guardian should take more care in the future." Zhao Yunlan gave his own left shoulder a dubious look, then quickly lost interest and got back to the subject at hand. "So you are saying the Hanga used the mountain River Awl to perform the Luobala curse, right?" The emissary nodded. "They would burn the beheaded person's body, then use the 3-star method of gathering yin to forcibly detain the person's soul in the valley. That resulted in the individual being drawn into the mountain River Awl, after which the Hanga used the heads to command the dead souls within the Awl." Pointing at Wang, Zhao Yunlan asked, "What about her?" The emissary glanced at Wang. She shivered, suddenly feeling as though everything that had happened during and after her life was laid out before him. "This young woman died when she was beheaded, but managed to escape the yin gathering spell and the mountain River Awl. The likeliest explanation is that someone preserved her body and head properly." Wang managed a bleak smile. "Back then, I was very immature and bitter. The previous guardian caught me when I possessed someone. I was taken in under the soul guarding order and had been there ever since. Wang isn't my original name. It belonged to the girl I possessed. In life, my name was Gwoh-uh. I was the daughter of the chief who died in the rebellion." Zhao Yunlan came to the annoying realization that his special investigations department was basically a summer camp for nepotism babies. "The leader of the rebellion was named Zhang," Wang continued. "He was a slave son. His mother was my mother's hair-combing maid. In our tribe, there were no ordinary people. There were the tribe's leader and nobility, and then there were slaves. So Changcheng naturally also grew up to be a slave. He was brave and hardworking and stood out among all of the tribe's slaves. He became my father's horsekeeper. By modern standards, you'd say he was a handsome, talented man whom everyone admired." There was pure bitterness in her smile now. "Unfortunately, among our tribe, a slave was just a slave no matter how talented they might be. A slave's life had no more value than the lives of livestock. They could be bought, sold, or dealt with anywhere. Changcheng was handsome and rich, but he was denied dignity. Eventually, my father took a fancy to a young female slave, Changcheng's little sister. When he got her pregnant, my mother was furious. She took her anger out on Changcheng's mother and found an excuse to behead her. My older brother whipped Changcheng's father to death, and Changcheng's sister, my father had forced her to begin with. After all of that, she hanged herself with a horsewhip." Zhao Yunlan dug out the last pack of beef jerky and began eating it. "So your dad was a total piece of shit." Wang didn't respond. Seeing that Zhao Yunlan's mood was still sour, the emissary coughed dryly and made an attempt at smoothing things over. "I noticed, beneath the offerings, there was originally a sacrificial stone under the mountain River Awl. The ordinary use of such a thing would be to record the names of all the souls suppressed by the Awl. The stone is still there, but the names have been removed. Did that also happen during the rebellion? Wang nodded. Changcheng led his brothers to victory. When they finally reached the forbidden area where the mountain River Awl is, he said that from then on, everyone in the tribe could live equally and with dignity. He used a huge file to grind away all the names on the stone. The chief, my father, mother, older brother, and other nobles, as well as their entourage and guards, were all hanged and decapitated in the yard of the mountain keeper's hut. After that, the Hong tribe never had slaves or nobility again. What about you? Zhao Yunlan asked. You weren't executed at the time because you secretly helped Changcheng, right? Wang looked down. We'd known each other since we were little. When father sent someone to capture him, I was the one who hid him. I just didn't want him to die. I didn't know. I had no way of knowing what would happen after that. Chapter 24. Brow furrowed, Zhao Yunlan looked at Wang. She stared straight at the ground. When she stared in one direction like that, it always made her look like she was spacing out. Eventually she spoke again, voice soft. I was still so young. I wasn't even 17 yet. I was completely naive and didn't understand anything. I couldn't see anything but what was happening right in front of me, and in my own head. I only knew to follow one path all the way to the end. I was childhood friends with Changcheng. Our positions were very different, but I never saw him as an outsider. Father wanted to kill him, but of course I was against it. To be honest, I blamed my father at the time. I thought what he'd done was wrong, and it also embarrassed me. He was our chief and my wonderful father. How could he have done something so despicable? Zhao Yunlan held his tongue. His expression was still ugly, but he sighed faintly. After another pause, Wang asked, Is there anywhere in this world where everyone is free and equal? There is, said Zhao Yunlan. Wang and the soul-executing emissary both turned toward him. There was still a speck of blood on his bottom lip, and his complexion was extra pale. Against the collar of his gray shirt, he looked a little worse for wear. Only his eyes were startlingly bright. Zhao Yunlan's eyes always shone brilliantly, as if nothing in the world could quench their light. When facing death, he said. The emissary couldn't help replying. The guardian's words are too cold. If that is so, why do mortals spend their lives seeking and struggling so bitterly? My lord, you need to look beyond the surface. Zhao Yunlan looked up. What constitutes fairness or equality? The reality is that what's fair for one person is always built upon someone else being treated unfairly. When someone is struggling to survive, equal means being well-fed and warmly dressed, like everyone else. Once they have a full belly and warm clothes, equal means having as much dignity as everyone else. Once they have dignity, a sense of superiority kicks in, and they won't be satisfied until they have more than other people. Nothing breaks the cycle but a coffin. Equality is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? The emissary was speechless. Finally, he gave a grim laugh. Your logic is preposterous. Zhao Yunlan moved on. To Wang, he said, So Changcheng successfully rebelled, killed your father, and removed the names from the sacrificial altar? No more slaves for the Hong. What happened then? After that, whenever there was an issue in the tribe, each family would choose a head of their household to raise their own suggestions. Everyone would discuss it and then listen to the one with the most support, she said. That was Changcheng's idea. He had never attended school or left the snowy mountains, but he already understood the concept of democracy that would become prevalent many years later. No matter the era, humans want similar things. Zhao Yunlan propped up one long leg, resting his hands on his knees. Despite his casual slouch, his words were like knives, each one sharper than the last. And that's how you died, isn't it? Caught off guard, Wang froze. She hadn't expected him to piece together things so quickly. The light in her eyes dimmed. I had nowhere to go. My only choice was to stay in Sangzan's house and be entirely reliant on him. But I didn't know how to do anything. I was the chief's daughter. From childhood on, my mother only taught me how to dress myself and order slaves around. I didn't know how to do chores, hunt, or run a household. Another girl in the tribe wanted to marry Sangzan and begged her father to ask him about marriage. Sangzan refused. She was furious and ran away from the mountain, and by the time she was found, she was already dead. They said she'd lost her footing, fallen down the mountain, and hit her head on a rock. Her father hated me after that. He and the other families banded together and said that I was the bastard chief's daughter. They said I knew witchcraft and that I refused to correct my ways even though they'd forgiven me and let me live. They said I was lazy and useless and would do anything to hold on to their hero, Sangzan. That I was jealous and cursed that man's daughter to die. He wanted to behead me. Wang Zheng's shoulders began to shake. She had once truly believed with her entire being that her father was wrong. In that innocent young girl's heart, she'd known that her fellow people shouldn't be slaves. They were people. They had worth. No one else should have power over their lives or deaths. Just like Sangzan, she had hoped they could all live in prosperity and that they could be equal, free, and happy. But the people she'd sympathized with and loved had hated and resented her. The girl's father had everyone vote with a show of hands. Not moving meant they were neutral on whether or not I should be executed. A raised hand meant agreeing that I should be beheaded. Wang Zheng couldn't hold it in anymore. Her voice cracked on beheaded. The day was crystal clear in her memory. Everyone had been present, their faces full of glee, and the stands were row after row of raised hands. Seen from the platform, those hands had seemed like the claws of monsters from the river at the heart of the netherworld. Nearly every hand was raised. All those people had looked at the young girl bound in front of them and shown her only coldness, numbness, ignorance, and cruelty. Together, they had all come to a shocking agreement. Kill her. Cut off her head. Faced with that, even if someone's heart had contained millions of bright lights, all light would be extinguished. There could be nothing left but ash. No one had remembered what she'd done, or at least they'd believed that she'd acted for selfish reasons. Wang Zheng wept as her tears fell to the ground and turned to fleeting wisps of smoke. Her figure became lighter and clearer. 300 years after her death, her tears should have been long since exhausted, but in this moment of pure anguish, she shed tears made of her own essence, weeping her soul away. Don't cry. Zhao Yunlan touched her chin lightly and wiped her tears, a soul-stabilizing talisman between his fingers. With a quiet exclamation, he pressed the talisman to her forehead. Her tears were instantly sealed off, preventing any more from escaping. She stared at him, eyes large and still filled with almost childlike innocence. Meeting his gentle, inscrutable gaze, she had the sudden conviction that he knew and understood everything. He held clarity out to her. Come inside first. She went still for a moment, then felt a soft, inexorable force pulling her into the stopped watch. She heard Zhao Yunlan say quietly, I'll let you out after it gets dark. Then she was gone. Zhao Yunlan and the soul-executing emissary stared at each other with nothing to say. Zhao Yunlan's eyes drifted closed as if he was exhausted. After a silence, the emissary patted his shoulder. Do not sleep yet. You were injured by the shock waves from the mountain River Awl. If you sleep here, you will undo the work I did to stabilize your soul. Rest a little later. Does your chest feel tight? Zhao Yunlan rubbed his forehead roughly. I'm all right, he said, voice hoarse. I've just been dizzy all day since that girl drugged me so carelessly. Perhaps I could take you back first and then return for the awl. Zhao Yunlan waved a hand and forced himself to alertness. A little pained, he asked, "Can I have a smoke?" The emissary was silent. Zhao Yunlan took that for agreement, backed a few steps away, and quickly lit a cigarette. He took 2 deep puffs like a practiced addict, not inflicting even a hint of secondhand smoke on the emissary. Every trace went into his lungs. Finally, he seemed much more awake. "I'm fine. Spitting blood clears out toxins too. I didn't realize that was the mountain river Awl just now, so it caught me off guard. No need to worry about me, my lord. You should just hurry and grab that thing. The early bird got the reincarnation dial last time. Don't delay on my account." Having said all that, he stood up and put his cigarette out in the snow. He took a wrinkled talisman from his pocket, crushed it up, and popped it into his mouth. As he chewed on the tough ball of paper, he said, "Let's go. You first, my lord." The emissary nodded and took down the boundless gray mist around them. They were once again facing the mountain river Awl. Zhao Yunlan had eaten a soul-stabilizing talisman at the last moment, but he could still feel the Awl's power, a soul-shaking ruthlessness with great destructive power. He stood tall and focused on the massive thing, and came to the realization that the Awl's cross-section was an octagon, regular and sharp, plunging straight into the center of the earth. The soul-executing emissary took a few dozen steps and then stopped, his hands clasped. A fierce gale suddenly swept over the ground. His black hood and robes billowed as if the whistling wind might tear them away. But he somehow remained shrouded within the black mist, nothing visible beneath. The emissary called out in a deep voice, "Soul of the mountain!" The mountain river Awl began to shake, followed by the ground. In moments, the entire snowy mountain seemed to be rumbling. A roar like thunder rang out in the far-off mountains, as if the gods had awakened from lifetimes of imprisonment under the ice and stone. They let out a horrible, frightening moan. The sky was dark as night. Suddenly, they could see flashes of figures around them. With tremendous difficulty, Zhao Yunlan kept his eyes open against the fierce wind and saw Wang, 16 or 17 years old, innocent, practically still a child, standing outside of a crowd of people. A handsome young man in ragged clothes stood somewhere high up. As if sensing something, he turned back to look at her across the distance. When their eyes met, his blood-covered face broke into a smile that was almost pure. Then he roared, swinging the huge metal shovel in his hands toward the large stone tablet on the sacrificial altar. The hills under his feet ran red with blood. Countless bodies lay below. The crowd of survivors craned their necks to watch his every movement. The man leveled the stone tablet. After a brief silence, he suddenly yelled something, voice gruff. Zhao Yunlan couldn't understand the words, but the spirit of them was plain. Blood and mud covered this man from head to toe. He had succeeded, but his face was full of anguish, not joy. A group of people who had been oppressed for millennia were tasting their first breath of freedom, and they nearly choked on their tears. The silent crowd finally began responding to him. The valley echoed with the yelling and crying of men. The illusion was suddenly gone. The mountain river Awl slowly started to rise from the ground. The soul-executing emissary extended another finger. "Soul of the water!" Zhao Yunlan stood stock still. The absolute blackness of the mountain river Awl was reflected in his eyes, which were reddened by the north wind. He pressed against clarity as if comforting the young girl's soul trapped inside, offering what consolation he could for the solitude from which she would never find peace. A piercing outcry broke out. Zhao Yunlan's head jerked involuntarily, trying to evade it as a fresh wave of dizziness swamped him. The screams grew louder and closer together, overlapping in shrill misery. The sound gave him the feeling of being clawed apart inside. Zhao Yunlan was about to be sick. Then the soul-executing emissary's robes emitted gray mist again, cutting the sound off completely. The mountain River Awl resumed its original appearance, slowly falling back into the position they'd found it in. Zhao Yunlan belatedly registered the fresh taste of blood. A quick touch confirmed that he'd bitten his tongue during the assault on his ears. "What was that?" he asked. The emissary's calm voice finally took on a note of worry. "I was too rash. That was the sound of tens of thousands of ghosts crying out in lamentation." "What?" "The girl said that Changcheng had raised the stone tablet atop the sacrificial altar. I thought his action would have released the innocent souls trapped within, so the number of resentful spirits still inside caught me off guard. The dead have no tears. A sound so vast must mean millions of innocent souls screaming at once, even if they risk being torn apart forever by doing so. It could level hundreds of thousands of snowy mountains, never mind you or me." Zhao Yunlan stood behind him, hands behind his back, not speaking. The emissary continued. "The mountain River Awl has been standing here for tens of thousands of years. It has been seen too much." Suddenly, clarity flashed. A white form emerged and made for the mountain River Awl at lightning speed. But before she made it even a meter, before she had even fully left the watch, a clear gossamer strand extended from Zhao Yunlan's hand and bound Wang tightly in place. She froze, then lowered her head. Ghost and living human gazed at each other. Wang Zheng's eyes looked wet, but with her tears still sealed by his talisman, crying was beyond her ability. Zhao Yunlan's face remained blank, not betraying a trace of sympathy. "Run." His voice held a glacial chill. "Let's see if you can get away from me twice." Wang Zheng looked down, afraid to meet his eyes. "Guardian," the emissary said steadily. There was no need to speak in anger. Out of respect for him, the glare Zhao Yunlan was directing at Wang Zheng eased slightly. "Do you think sacrificing yourself to the mountain River Awl can appease the resentment of tens of thousands of ghosts? Do you think sincerity can move mountains? Or do you really think you're that important? Are you a complete idiot?" The long, thick red stitches encircling Wang Zheng's neck were becoming more and more prominent. The paper talisman stuck to her forehead fluttered as she trembled. She looked every inch the zombie girl in a third-rate horror movie, but no one could laugh about the comical resemblance. Having let off some steam, Zhao Yunlan felt better. He found a place on the ground to sit next to the emissary, then gestured toward Wang Zheng with his chin. "Sit." The gossamer thread binding her surged and transformed into a silver chair sized for a single person. People belonging to ethnic minorities from bitterly cold regions often had a particular warm enthusiasm about them. But there was no trace of it in Wang Zheng. Perhaps the story of her life and death was too long and cold to sustain it. Whatever the reason, she seemed perpetually gloomy and quiet, withdrawing into herself no matter the situation. Her jet-black hair cascaded down around her face, drifting in mid-air. Calmer now, Zhao Yunlan said, "Sometimes a listener only needs to hear a bit of a story before they can guess the ending. Do you know why that is?" Wang Zheng looked up without answering, and Zhao Yunlan sighed. "It's because its ending is inevitable. And if something was destined to happen, there's not a damn thing you alone could have done to prevent it." "How do you know?" Wang Zheng mumbled. "I just understand people like Changcheng," Zhao Yunlan said. "Hundreds of generations of slaves. When a father dies, the son still needs to serve. If Changcheng was the first one who ever dared to truly rebel, his heart must have been bursting with discontent. A courageous, upright, outstanding man like that, he might conceivably be willing to die for you if you wanted his life. but he'd never allow you to harm his dignity. Forget about empty things like titles or honors, or distant things like promotions or wealth. Isn't a man's most fundamental dignity found in taking care of his family and in being able to keep the person dearest in his heart safe? From close by, the emissary murmured, "Does that describe you as well, guardian?" You can't force something like fate. Zhao Yunlan had no idea why the emissary might interject with something so trivial. A bit taken aback, he answered, "If someone was willing to follow me to the ends of the earth, if they took care of me and understood me and my needs, but I didn't even have the heart to protect them, what the fuck would I even be? Would I even deserve to be called human?" The emissary's hands had been resting on his knees, but now he withdrew them into his sleeves where no one could see them clench them into fists. Softly, he said, "The guardian's affections run deep. The one who receives them will be fortunate indeed." Huh? The praise made Zhao Yunlan freeze, thrown off by the comment. Then he laughed it off. "Ayo, my lord, please don't. I don't have the fortitude to be praised by you." The emissary changed the subject lightly rather than continuing with that line of thought. "For the people's sake, Changcheng bore the burden of such horrendous deeds. He gambled everything to give them a better life, but having personally made such an impossible dream come true, there was no way he could have imagined what would follow." Zhao Yunlan nodded. "If I were in his shoes and the woman I loved died at those people's hands, under the rules I'd laid down, I would hate them even more than I'd hated the old chief." More than that, the soul-executing emissary looked up through his gray mist at the towering, unmoving Awl. "Even rending them limb from limb could never appease my hatred." He spoke quietly, but the cold in his voice was bottomless. Wang felt it keenly. She shrank back behind Zhao Yunlan. "Did they behead you in front of him?" Zhao Yunlan asked. She shook her head. "They put him under house arrest. The girl's father said I had bewitched Changcheng and that it was all for his own good." After a silence, Zhao Yunlan said, "Then was he the one who collected your body?" Wang nodded. "So when you said you wanted to come here and find your body and finally rest in peace, you were just lying to me?" Wang looked down. Eventually, she nodded again. Brow creased, Zhao Yunlan looked at her for some time. Finally, he glanced away. "This is the last time," he said stiffly. The soul-executing emissary intervened. "Did Changcheng put your body in water?" Wang inhaled deeply, taking a moment to calm herself. "Yes, among our tribe, the mountain represents detainment and intimidation, while the water represents light that can float freely for miles. When slaves or criminals died, they were beheaded and sealed on the mountaintop. When nobles or highly respected people died, they were given a water burial and sent drifting down the river. Changcheng dug my head out in the night and stole my body before it could be burned. He cut off the head of the body of that girl who died accidentally and swapped our bodies. He took me down the river and sewed my head and body together, then put me in the body bag that had been prepared for her. He held me and wept the entire night, and the next day he stood and watched as someone else put me in the river." She raised her head minutely, lightly tracing the circle of red thread with her fingertips. The stitches were tight and fine. Rather than being creepy, the gesture was heartbreaking to see. How must Changcheng have felt as he held her body and washed her face clean, as his fingers touched that pale, waxen face that held only death, as he sewed her body and head together? Perhaps he had never even had the chance to tell her about the feelings he had always kept hidden, that had never seen the light. Time was relentless and needlessly cruel. If someone hesitated even slightly, time would steal away their dearest desire and leave them with ashes, broken-hearted and unable to turn back the clock. The two men listening were both silent, lost in thought. "The water took my body away, but I never left," Wang said. I kept watching over him. He became a different person. Voting in the tribe had always been conducted by 3 people who took turns. One was Sangzan, one was the person who led the charge to have me killed, and the third was a well-respected elder. They would bring up important issues, and everyone else would raise their hands to speak. After some time, Sangzan married the elder's granddaughter. The 2 of them joined forces against the man who killed me. Ultimately, they entrapped and framed him. 2 years later, everyone voted to kill him too. Zhao Yunlan took out another cigarette, held it under his nose, and took a small whiff. After another year passed, the respected elder also died. It was believed that he died of old age, but I saw Sangzan poison him. Wang Zheng's brow twitched, as if even now she couldn't accept that fact. Poison was a coward's weapon. How had an upstanding hero turned into a weasel who could poison someone in secret? By using this method, it was as if he'd been determined to shame the people who'd secretly killed, even if it meant dishonoring himself. Next it was his wife, his young son, his own flesh and blood. Wang Zheng's nearly transparent hands twisted in the folds of her equally non-existent white dress. Every time he killed someone, he would secretly cut off their head the day before they were supposed to go in the water. He would replace their head with a rock and bury their head on the mountain. The weight caused their bodies to sink to the bottom of the river, unable to float away. By that point, no one in the tribe could stand against him. His reputation was at its peak. After years of careful scheming, he was able to manipulate everyone so that they believed they were voting freely, when actually he was ensuring that they thought the way he wanted them to. Eventually, he became the new chief. The new chief, who held all the power yet wanted nothing but the tribe's destruction. After that, there were power struggles between different factions. Sangzan would suppress or support them, and even secretly fan the flames between them. The boy who had once been so honest and brave had learned to be a conspirator all on his own. The boy who had once held the corpse of the person he loved and wept through the night had turned into a cold-blooded, dangerous person. Just as those good people who danced, sang, and only wanted to work hard for a better life would also raise their hands in blades to behead an innocent girl, then seal her soul into darkness and slavery for all eternity. In the 15th year after my death, the Hanga tribe once again descended into internal chaos. The slaves who had been suppressed for generations split into 2 factions and pointed weapons at their brethren. The battle was even crueler and fiercer than what had taken place before. They fought for an entire day and night. The valley was filled with the dead. Young children sat next to the bodies and wailed, faces smeared with blood. Vultures attracted by the scent of death circled overhead, but didn't descend because Sangzan had led the rest of the people to the sacrificial altar, where he lit the oil he had buried there before. While the fire blazed around him, he lifted the stone slab he'd set upside down under the mountain River Awl. Even more softly, Wang Zheng said, "That stone slab that had once represented eternal slavery, the one that had been scoured bare, once again had everyone's names carved into it. The enormous fire kept burning and burning, as if it wanted to consume the entire valley. Only the mountain River Awl remained, a cold, unmoving pillar of shame. Those tens of thousands of ghosts had good reason to raise their voices in lamentation." Chapter 25. "Okay, I get it," Zhao Yunlan interrupted. "Dispassionate. In other words, all the resentful spirits inside the mountain River Awl are tribesmen and followers that Sangzan killed. So enough about all that shit from thousands of years ago. What's our next move here and now?" The sole executing emissary said nothing at first. Wang Zheng opened her mouth to speak, but Zhao Yunlan stabbed a finger at her. "Zip it. I wasn't asking you." Wang Zheng zipped it. "The mountain River Awl suppresses and absorbs souls," the emissary said. Even someone who died peacefully of old age and had their soul drawn into the Awl would eventually become a vicious, resentful spirit, let alone those who died in such bitter, violent ways. If you ask me, there was no other way. Either we destroy this hallowed artifact, or we forcibly suppress all the souls contained. The attempt at tact left Wang staring at him, wide-eyed with confusion. My lord, what do you... Zhao Yunlan threw tact out the window. He means if we can't blow up the mountain River Awl, the only option is to obliterate all the souls inside it. It's the only way to prevent further problems. Wang covered her mouth with a hand. The emissary shook his head. Executing a soul for no reason is unjust. That left destroying the mountain River Awl. All three of them fell silent. Could the Netherworld's hallowed artifact just be destroyed on a whim? Zhao Yunlan sat on the ground, toying with his lighter. As he stared into the tiny flame, he suddenly remembered something. On my way up here, we saw a reaper with a lantern on the highway outside of Qingxi village. It wasn't that far away. Did they not know what was going on here? Did they just pass right by the mountain River Awl? The emissary paused almost imperceptibly before answering. They must ferry hundreds of people. Perhaps they lacked the time to deal with it. The glance Zhao Yunlan gave him seemed dubious. If I may ask, my lord, why did you wait until now to gather the 4 hallowed artifacts? They've been lost in the mortal world for so long. Stumbling into the reincarnation dial was a coincidence, but this time you came straight for the mountain River Awl, didn't you? Realizing he'd said too much, the soul-executing emissary made no reply. Zhao Yunlan was far too astute. He showed a facade of being brash and unreliable, but that was a cover for his true shrewdness. Whenever he exposed his sharp mind without warning, he could cut right to the heart of an issue. Zhao Yunlan wasn't about to let the emissary off so easily. His gaze slowly lowered, coming to rest on the soul-executing emissary's wide sleeves. The blood on my lord's sleeves is still wet. I'd never even heard of a Yochu until recently, when they appeared at almost the exact same time as the reincarnation dial, one of the 4 hallowed artifacts. The Netherworld has never breathed a word to me about them before. What exactly are Yochu? Where did they come from? They can't have just appeared out of nowhere. And as for those so-called hallowed artifacts, shouldn't everyone be fighting as hard as they can for them? Why would you guys let them drift around the mortal realm for all these years? The emissary was accustomed to questioning others. He had never been on the receiving end like this. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, unable to offer a good excuse, he acted like a gentleman and offered the only truth he could. Forgive me, but I cannot say. Lying to someone like Zhao Yunlan was basically asking to be humiliated. It was much simpler to fall back on, I can't tell you, which took much less energy than lying. Lighting another cigarette, Zhao Yunlan took a deep drag and stopped asking. He stood up and took out the patch of wall with the octagon symbol on it. Holding it in his palm, he asked Wang, "What does this mean? To your people, does this symbolize the mountain River Awl?" Wang examined it closely, then shook her head. "No, when I was small, my father taught me that this meant mountain. When a circle surrounds it, it means a river surrounding a mountain." "Are you sure your dad wasn't messing with you?" Zhao Yunlan asked. "Doesn't your illiterate tribe have another symbol for mountains?" Wang was good-tempered. Even when her boss said something so blatantly racist, she was able to stay calm. She didn't even daydream about beating him up. "Those are for normal mountains," she clarified. "The octagon is reserved for the sacred mountain. This one, where the mountain River Awl is. Before I died, this was my tribe's forbidden area. No one but the chief was allowed to come here." Zhao Yunlan's brows furrowed. "But I didn't see any water around the mountain." "After all this time, maybe the landscape has changed." Zhao Yunlan gazed toward the mountain River Awl. "The souls of the mountain and water. The Hanga used the mountain River Awl for the Luobula curse for who knows how many generations. They must have had a deeper understanding of what's going on. Why does giving someone a water burial in the river enable them to escape the mountain River Awl? The soul executing emissary saw where he was going with that and gave it some thought. The mountain does not move, and running water does not nurse decay. The guardian is suggesting water can defeat it. Why don't we try it and see? Zhao Yunlan asked. The emissary stood up. Zhao Yunlan waved to Wang as if calling a dog, impatiently tapping his watch. She understood. With a flash, she was gone. The emissary raised a hand and dispelled the mist, then immediately pointed at the ground. The circle of snow and ice surrounding the mountain River Awl quickly began to melt, becoming a thin ring of water. As anticipated, the mountain River Awl's restless stirring quieted at once. It stood there in malicious silence, like a lunatic who had been temporarily appeased. Standing cautiously outside the circle of water, the emissary observed the Awl's reaction. As more and more ice and snow melted, a bubbling stream formed. It spread through the heavy, accumulated snow like little snakes hissing their way toward the mountain River Awl. A faint whirring sound caught Zhao Yunlan's attention. For a moment, he thought it was tinnitus, but gradually he began to make out intermittent words. A voice said, "Aged, aged but not yet old." Zhao Yunlan went completely still. Something beyond words stirred in his heart. He listened carefully and found himself speaking in unison with the voice. "Stone that is aged but not yet old. Water that is frozen but not yet cold. Body that is dead but not yet born. Soul that is melted but not yet burned." The soul executing emissary's head whipped around. After a dazed moment, Zhao Yunlan came back to himself. He pinched the bridge of his nose forcefully, struck by the suspicion that he was hallucinating. For a second there, he felt sure that the mountain River Awl was forging some sort of connection with him, pulling him closer. In that moment, when he looked at the ground, a white light reflected off the snow and into his eyes. Zhao Yunlan's pupils constricted at the sight of a person appearing out of nowhere behind the soul-executing emissary. A huge axe came slashing straight down toward the back of the emissary's head. From the moment he entered the valley, Zhao Yunlan had kept one hand tucked in his pocket, holding his gun at the ready. Reacting instantaneously, he drew the gun, braced his wrist on the emissary's shoulder, and fired without even blinking. Through the silencer, the bullet hit the attacker square in the forehead. At the same time, the emissary swung the blade to the side. He turned like a vortex of night incarnate, a fierce gale rising around him. The friction of his blade and its sheath made an ear-splitting sound as the end collided with the descending giant axe. They both took 3 steps back. That was when Zhao Yunlan realized the axe-wielder's face was covered by a deathly pale ghost mask. Ink-black fluid was trickling from the bullet hole in his forehead. The ghost-faced figure slowly raised his hand, wiped the black blood off, and turned to Zhao Yunlan. Following his movements, the mask's drawn-on features slowly twisted into something resembling a smile. "Guardian?" The voice was muffled beneath the mask. "It's been thousands of years, but you haven't changed a bit." Zhao Yunlan arched an incredulous brow. That was rich, coming from someone he'd never heard of. And where did the thousands of years come from? The mask's eyebrows suddenly turned downward, morphing into an expression that looked like it was torn between crying and laughter. The person touched the bloody hole in his forehead, exploring inside it. Oh, okay. "The Guardian didn't quite disregard me like this before. But it doesn't matter. After all, the favor of lending a fire couldn't be repaid even if I died hundreds—" The emissary didn't let him continue. The soul-executing blade narrowed into a sliver of piercing light, nearly whistling as it sliced through the air. Zhao Yunlan had never seen the emissary in such a violent rage. Sensibly, he stepped aside in case the 2 clashing titans needed more space. From his watch, Wang asked, "Director Zhao, who's that?" Zhao Yunlan held a cigarette between his lips, stuffing his hand into the opposite sleeve to keep warm. He squatted down. How should I know? I don't know everyone. Do I look like someone who just makes friends randomly? Wang didn't dignify that with a response. Zhao Yunlan observed the battle for a while, then put out his cigarette in the snow. He exhaled into his frozen hands and rubbed them together. Stone that is aged but not yet old. Water that is frozen but not yet cold. As he spoke, his gaze shifted to the side. He knocked on his watch. You know, I just had an idea. I'm going to try it out. That was exactly what Wang was afraid of. Zhao Yunlan having ideas. Director Zhao, she cried out. Director Zhao! Zhao Yunlan ignored her and took a ring of keys from his belt. The old keychain had once looked like a book, but the designs on it had been rubbed smooth. On the back, guarding was written crookedly. There was a split down the middle, like a locket that could be opened. Carrying it, he headed toward the mountain River Awl. Suddenly, a group of Yochu burst from the heaving ground. They surrounded him, watching with a predatory gaze. Zhao Yunlan looked right back at them. Lazily drawing out his words, he said, "Oh, I get it now. He's the master, And you're the ones who took the reincarnation dial. What are you planning on doing with the 4 hollowed artifacts?" The Yochu didn't answer. They just took a step toward him, shoulder to shoulder, trying to scare him off. Zhao Yunlan gave a cold laugh. With a cigarette between his fingers, he opened the little book-shaped keychain. A small ball of fire sprang up, revealing that the object was an intricate lighter, not a locket. With a small noise, Zhao Yunlan lit his cigarette. He kept holding the lit cigarette rather than putting it in his mouth. "I hate 2 things," he said. "Ugly people doing evil things, and menacing mutts blocking the road. You guys truly are model soldiers of the new age. All you do is trigger other people's landmines." Like a tiny firecracker, the cigarette flew from his hand with a whoosh. A heartbeat later, it flared into a tremendous fireball with a long tail, heading straight for the Yochu like a meteor of destruction. It was no ordinary fire. The Yochu screamed pitifully as it closed in on them. "The true flames of Samadhi!" 2 of them, unable to dodge in time, were swallowed by the conflagration. In the firelight, Zhao Yunlan's smile glowed. "Forget true flame and fake flame. Are you so uncultured that you don't even recognize the #1 hidden weapon on the ranking of weapons? In the streets, people call this little wonder the monkey fleeing to the sky." As he said this, the dashingly named fireball headed straight for the mountain River Awl's base. Ooh, okay, we did it. We made it to chapter 25. I don't know what I told y'all we were reading to. I think I said chapter 26. That was a mistake because I can't do it. It will just be 27, 28, 29 on Saturday or Sunday or something. Let's go through my notes really quickly, which I don't have a lot. Got it. So yay, more history about Wang and her people. And the only thing I can say about that is I think it's unfair that Wang was blamed for that girl dying and just the way that people treated her and that whole aspect. You know, she's the one that saved their leader, basically, you know. And for them to turn on her like that, it's pretty sucky. But it kind of brings what Zhao Yunlan said to light. I mean, yeah, we live in a society where equality will never exist until everyone is dead. Because, yeah, there's a scripture in the Bible that says something like, the human heart is desperately wicked. Now, don't get me wrong, I do believe that human hearts are also desperately kind as well. 2 truths can exist at the same time. That scripture is not deflecting that people can have pure hearts or good hearts. But yeah, we live in a society where even the kindest of people can have malice being directed toward them from other people. even if it's something they never ever deserved. Let's just say they never ever did anything wrong, never hurt a freaking butterfly or a freaking ant. We just live in a world where somebody's going to hate that person. And it might not even be because of anything they did. Again, it's just going to be because they're projecting whatever is in their heart onto that person. So we will never have equality because someone is always going to be hating on someone, whether they quote unquote have the right to or don't have the right to. And yes, we live in a world where if people are given the opportunity to do something bad or to express, their vengeance, I'm not saying everyone will do it, but they're going to do it. There are many people who won't, but there are also many people who will. All you have to do is give them an inch, and they'll take that inch, and then they'll elongate it into a freaking mile. That's all I can say about that. The only thing I will say is, even though I guess I understand why her backstory was given, I still just was kind of like, okay, how does her backstory strengthen this story? Or how does it relate to the story? How is it relevant to the story as far as understanding the mission that needs to be taken out, as far as getting this thingy back where it belongs, the mountain River Awl? Because I feel like they could have not had that information and still come to the same conclusion. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that. I get the information, I get why it's there or whatever, but it's just kind of like, okay, we have this side character, because so far, Wang literally just came out of nowhere, and then we were given her backstory, and then she was incorporated, I guess, into the main plot. But it was just kind of like, was that really necessary to do? Could they still have found this mountain River Awl? Because he was looking for it anyway. And I mean, the soul executing emissary was looking for it anyway. Seeing all the resentful spirits, did he need to know why the resentful spirits were there? Or did he just need to know that they're so powerful that, yeah, we only have two options. We either got to destroy this mountain or we got to kill all these souls, So that's my only thing. Again, like I said, there are lots of times in Danmei when a backstory is given, and I totally understand it, but a lot of times it helps clarify why someone important is doing something. I think when I think about Arha, when we think about Shry Mei and why he did the certain things that he did, without me saying, too much information, Shry Mei was not a main character, but he was like a sub character, I think you have your main characters, your sub characters, and then just your others. I can't think of the term right now, your others. And right now, because she just came out of nowhere, Wang, I put her in the others category. Anyway, let me not beat down on the chapters. What else do I have to... Oh, nope, that's it. Okay, yeah. So I guess we have the remaining 37 pages, and then we shall be done. The other... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm flipping through the book and I just saw a scandalous picture. The other thing that I was going to say is the picture that is in chapter chapter 23, where it has the soul executing emissary saving Zhao Yunlan. I'm not gonna lie, the picture is hot. It's hot. Yeah, y'all have to excuse me. I wasn't expecting to see the picture that I saw. I'm gonna go ahead and go now so that you guys can enjoy the rest of your Friday, or if it's done, so you can have a good night's sleep and maybe not dream about all these resentful spirits. I'll catch up with you all next time when we read the last bit of this book. Oh, Wahng.